Hi everyone, Mike here with another Heroes and Bosses video. This time I'm painting more Rust and Bones. I asked myself, can you have too much about Rust and Bones? And the answer is, maybe? But I'm not there yet. I saw these Sepulchral Guard from GW and I had to paint them. The first thing I want to do is fill the gaps around their feet using some earth texture. One of these skeletons has a cracked open skull and I decided to fill that with dirt too. After that's dried, I'm going to prime all of these with Chaos Black Spray Primer. I'm starting off with the bones because I want to dry brush them, and dry brushing is messy. It's better to get this part done first. Anytime I dry brush, I first get the brush wet and then wipe it off. Next, dunk it into your paint straight out of the pot or bottle and then mash that paint into the bristles. I'm then going to wipe off most of the paint onto this paper towel. The first layer of paint will be a pretty heavy dry brush. I'm trying to cover most of the area of bones with this paint, but I'm not putting the brush into any recessed areas like the mouth, eye sockets, or gaps between bones. I'm moving the brush perpendicular in places like the fingers and toes so that I don't get any paint in between them. The first color I'm using here is called Heavy Gray from Vallejo, and it's more like a green beige color, similar to Deathworld Forest. Next I'm switching to a flat makeup brush. Any old beat up flat brush will do, but makeup brushes are pretty great for dry brushing. This time I'm using World War II German Beige and I'm only making downward strokes with the brush this time, unless it's across fingers and toes. I'm using this on pretty much all of the bones, but I'm leaving the underside of the bones untouched. I'm focusing some of this paint on the top of the head as well, just to brighten that up. Next up are the weapons and armor. I'm using 3 colors to mix a deep blue-green metallic color, roughly equal parts gunmetal, Stegadon scale green, and Abaddon black. I want this metal color to be one that contrasts well with both the rust colors I'm going to use as well as the cloak color. Edge highlights are also going to look better on a darker metal color. All of the weapons are getting painted with this color, as well as most of the armor. I'm leaving parts of the shields to be painted bronze, as well as the breastplate on the coolest looking skeleton. It's up to you how much you want to be bronze versus steel, but I definitely recommend at least 2 metal colors to visually break things up. Now after I was done the steel, I realized I didn't like how dull the faces looked, so at this point I used some thinned down ivory to brighten up the teeth, cheekbones, and eye sockets. I also used a bit on the knees, fingers, and toes. After using a normal brush on the first one, I wondered why I was doing this the hard way and switched to dry brushing for the other 6 skeletons. A very light dry brush over the face and other prominent areas of the bone are all you need. Next up is the bronze. My preferred bronze color is currently Balthazar gold. I'm using this on the hilts and crossguards of the weapons, the buckles, the faces of the metal shields, and the breastplate of the coolest skeleton. For the next part, I'm using a custom wash that I've called Machinery Wash. The proportions are marked on the bottle. This is a wash I like to use over metal that I want to look dirty and grimy. This is going over all of the steel and bronze areas. Once the wash is dry, I'm doing a light dry brush of all the metal areas with a bright silver. I'm using this very sparingly. It's not going all over the metal areas. I'm only brushing against the raised surfaces to pick out their edges. I removed nearly all of the paint from the brush before doing this dry brush. You don't want it to leave streaks on your metal. Next I want to add a bit of rust to the weapons and armor. I'm starting with the iron oxide colors. All of these are being watered down to a glaze, so at least 2 parts water to paint. I'm going to start with the darkest brown, and I'm just dragging my brush across the pits in the silver metal areas and letting this paint pool inside of them. I'm also going to dab this color onto any rivets that I see, and then wipe off the top of the rivet with the tip of my finger. Now I'm switching to a lighter rust color. This one is Orange Rust from Secret Weapon. This time I'm going over the exact same areas as before, but I'm using less of the rust color. I want some of the first color to still be showing. I'm either dragging the brush across the edge of a pit, or I'm dabbing some of this orange rust on the areas that already have the darker brown color. Finally, I'm switching to a yellow-brown, and I'm using this very sparingly. I just put small dabs into the biggest pits or the center of large rust spots. Now I'm going to do the exact same thing to the bronze areas using these 2 colors. Once again, I'm starting with the darkest color. This one is Sotek Green. And this time I'm going to be adding the paint not only to the pits, but to any ornamentation that might collect water and have it pool long enough to corrode the metal. And just like before, I'm switching to the lighter color and putting small dabs of this on top of the darker one. This one is Nihilakh Oxide. Next I'm going to cheat a little bit. All of the leather straps already have an edge highlight on them from the dry brushing on the bone. I'm going to leave that, and I'm going to paint a dark stripe down the center of each strap using German Grey. Next I'm painting the wooden shafts of the weapons using 2 shades of grey. I want the wood to look old with the color bleached out of it. I'm base coating the spear and the scythe with Mechanicus Standard Grey, and then I'm painting over that with Dawnstone. I also use this color on one of these skeletons' shields. Just for some variety, I switched to Zandri dust for the rest of the wood areas, so the remaining shields and the shaft of this mace. Once the grey and tan areas were dry, I then covered all of them with Agrax Earthshade Gloss. You can go with regular Agrax. I went with this one because it gives just a bit extra contrast. Now for the cloaks. Every skeleton has some kind of fabric on them, and I'm going to use the same color for all of them. I'm starting off by base coating all of the fabric on the skeletons with a dark maroon color, Barak-nar Burgundy. Next I want to do some quick and easy highlights and shadows. I'm putting out 2 more colors. I'm making up a shadow color, which is going to be roughly 2 parts Abaddon black and 1 part burgundy. You don't want total black, but you do want a significant difference between the base color and the shadow color. I'm also putting out some pure burgundy just to fix any mistakes along the way. The second new color is going to be pure Screamer Pink, and I'm mixing all of the colors with a few drops of water to make it more like a glaze. So, starting with the shadow color, I'm painting any deep indentations and the underside of the fabric. This may take a couple of layers to get it dark enough, and if you see any patches that look out of place or don't blend in well, you can just smooth that out with some pure burgundy. The fabric on these skeletons, for the most part, has deep folds that are easy to paint this way. Almost no wet blending was required. Next I'm switching to Screamer Pink, and I'm painting the raised parts of the folds and the top of the fabric. Basically any part you see when looking straight down on the model. Now this cloak was the largest and most complex, so it does need a bit of wet blending on the ends of it. The deep indentation near the spear is painted with the shadow color. The center is painted with pure burgundy, and then I used thin layers of screamer pink on the end, always moving my brush strokes towards the end of the cloak. I'm just using thin layers and slowly building up the brightness towards the end. Two of the skeletons have fur on their cloaks. I'm base coating the fur with Steel Legion Drab. Next, I'm using the same dark wash that I used on the armor on the fur, but anything dark will do for this part. And finally, I'm going to follow that up using a quick dry brush using Zandri stone. That's the skeletons completely painted, and now I'm going to do the bases. I'm using 3 base colors here. The first is Dryad bark, which is going over all of the dirt. All of the bones that are scattered on the bases are getting a base coat of heavy gray from Vallejo. I'm painting all of the rocks with Mechanicus standard gray, but the gravestones are getting dry brushed instead of painted. Once those 3 colors have had a chance to dry, everything on the base is getting covered in a layer of Agrax Earthshade. Next, I'm highlighting everything on the ground, and you can probably guess where these colors are going to go. I'm dry brushing everything here. If it's on the ground, it doesn't need to be clean and pretty. I'm first hitting all of the dirt and the bones with Steel Legion Drab. Next, I'm doing a light dry brush over all of the rocks and the gravestones using Celestra Gray. And finally, the bones are getting one final dry brush using Karak stone. I am going to add a bit of flock to the base, but first I'm going to paint the rim of the base and spray all of these with a matte varnish. Here are the basing materials I'll be using, just some short turfy moss flock and some dead grass. Dab some watered down white PVA glue into some random places and then sprinkle on the moss. You don't even need to wait for that to dry before you do the exact same thing with some dead grass flock. And there you have it, the Sepulchral Guard from Games Workshop, though I plan on using these to terrorize my Dungeons & Dragons players. Thank you very much to all my patrons for supporting the creation of these videos. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, subscribe and turn on your notifications, because more subscribers gives me more bragging rights over my friends who also have YouTube channels, and that's what YouTube is all about. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments section below, and thanks for watching.